Welcome to the daily news analysis session of Narayana IS Academy. Today we are going to deal with the 5 most important articles from The Hindu and Indian Express. We are going to cover them comprehensively and all the parts relevant for the examinations will be covered over here. Now before we start, here we have a quote for you. The only way to finish is to start. So anything you want to finish, anything you have in your mind, first you have to take that first initial step. So start, and once you start, don't stop until the goal is achieved. Okay, a brief notification regarding the 110 days self study planner for UPSC prelims 2025. Now this has been provided in the application of Narayana's Academy. You can go through that QR code, scan it, and get this particular plan for self study. Apart from that, 1 year and 2 year courses have already been launched. The admissions are open. If you're planning for 2026 examination, you can go for this 1 year prelims come mains course. If you're planning for 2027 batch, then go for this 2 year prelims come mains integrated course. The details regarding this course are given over here, as well as you can go through the website and there you'll find out all the details. You can go through that QR code for the registration. Now, moving ahead, we've taken 5 articles. The first article is related to three language formula. Now, there is a debate in India wherein we discuss whether we should have three compulsory languages to be studied in our schooling. Now, the formula is being debated because there are some states who resist this idea, whereas there are some other states who say that we should have three language formula in India. So, we'll understand this debate. The second article is related to Einstein ring. Now, if you have ever heard about gravitational lensing, that concept is very much related to this Einstein ring. So, we'll understand that part. European Space Agency has found out something very interesting. The third article is related to care economy. Now, if you have ever heard this term, care economy, very interesting. So, we are looking at a major aspect of our economy wherein caregiving is considered to be highly important and has a role in the overall labor participation or overall economy. Then the fourth article is related to the PLI scheme. Earlier government had launched PLI scheme and now here we have a plan for PLI 2.0. Okay, we'll study this part. The last article, this tone trouble, the power to block content must be used sparingly. So this article is somewhat we have covered earlier. Okay, this article is related to the government's power to control the content. So this one we have already covered. I'll show you where we have covered. You'll understand it. Now let's start with the first article. Three language debate. Now this article is highly important for you and this will be important for GS paper 2. Now education is part of GS paper 2 as well as there is a federal issue involved over here. That's why GS paper 2 highly important. Look at this previous year question. National Education Policy 2020 is in conformity with the Sustainable Development Goal 4. It intends to restructure and reorient education system in India, critically examine the statement. Now such questions, now this is a very broad question asked on national education policy. You can expect such questions in future, and especially when we are talking about three language formula, that is also a part of this national education policy because this policy supports the idea of three language formula. Okay, moving ahead, although it is in news, let's understand what do we mean by three language formula or three language debate. So this concept was first introduced in the year 1968. In that year, there's a commission called Kothari Commission. This was the commission who first recommended this idea of three language formula, after which National Policy on Education came in the year 1968. And in that policy, it was mentioned that government has to take interest or take steps towards three language formula. Now, what was the objective? Or in simple terms, if we have to understand three language formula, we say that in schooling, there should be three subjects, three language subjects. The first would be your local language. Now, if you go to the northern part of India, their first language would obviously be Hindi and second language would be English. Whereas if you go to the southern part, their first language is their regional language. Now, the three language formula suggests that for South India or for any such non-Hindi state, the first one language that the students should study is their regional language. The second language they should study is Hindi. Third language they should study is English. Whereas in case of Hindi states, it is expected that Hindi and English should be complemented with any other regional language. Now, the overall mandate or overall idea or the objective behind bringing this three language formula was number one, enhancing the cognitive development. So, some of this research, some of the studies have claimed that a person who has knowledge of multiple languages or a person who has a linguistic skill which involves multiple languages, that person's cognitive abilities get improved. Now, whether it is problem solving or critical thinking, all that gets improved. It becomes very flexible because of more languages and this linguistic skill. So this was one of the objective. Other objective is national integration. Now, India has seen the horrible past of partition. We are very much concerned about our national integration. We want that India should stay united. There should be integration of all parts of India because we have so much diversity. We have diversity in terms of race, in terms of languages, in terms of caste, in terms of religions. There are so many identities. But one of the identity that is very strong is the language. And we have seen that on the basis of language, we have created many states, right? So the state reorganization which took place, language played an important role in that. So if language is an identity, then it might come in the conflict with the national identity or the sovereign identity. So the point is, the country always wants that there should be some national integration, and national integration will happen when there is brotherhood among all the citizens. And for that, it's better to have a three language formula wherein there will be cultural exchange among people. When people will know the language of the other region, or let's say there is Hindi, which is common among everyone throughout India, in that case, there will be cultural exchange between all the linguistic groups, different people, or a person living in Tamil Nadu and a person living in Kashmir, they will have some integration. Then the third idea is educational equity. Now, if we have some uniformity as well as this three language formula, so at the national level, when we look at things, we can provide a platform for all these students to compete. So let's say a person is coming from southern part of India. He or she does not know Hindi, and that person is moving to Delhi or some other state of northern part of India, and there they want to compete. Somewhere that language would become a barrier for them. Similarly, the reverse case can also happen. So here we are saying, when we want educational equity, when we want that people from diverse backgrounds, they should compete together and they should have some advantage at national level, that can come through this three language formula. Then fourth is the purpose of preserving regional language. Now we all know that right now the most importance given to any language would be the language known as English. It's one of, we can call it a global language. And if anyone who wants to get a good employment or wants to access the resources, English becomes something very important, or rather English acts as a skill set and adds value to that person, because the overall market demands that you should have a good hold over English. So obviously we have included English as part of this three language formula. But what about the regional languages? Right now at the world level, if you observe, there were so many languages, but right now English has dominated so much that most of the countries, most of the people are now speaking English. So there is a homogenization which is taking place. Earlier there was diversity. There were thousands and thousands of languages, and many people used to speak those different languages. Now almost everyone is speaking one language, and very few are speaking the remaining languages. So those remaining languages, those are getting extinguished, or they're not here. After some time we might not see any person speaking that language. So we want to preserve our regional languages too. So one of the way is to have this three language formula. Let's say you're going to a private school. Usually private schools prefer English, and in the second language they might put Hindi or any other language. Now what about your regional language? So this is the overall objective behind bringing three language formula. Now, if you see the historical evolution, before independence, there was colonial rule, British era. Now, in the British era, obviously, the priority was given to English language over any of the regional language, whether Hindi or any other regional language. So that we have seen very clearly. There were some regional movements which tried to bring back the role of regional language or mother tongue. Okay. Now, this was the time period before independence. After independence, or at the time of independence, if we see the Constituent Assembly debates, there was a debate regarding national language. Now, this debate continued, and at the end of this debate, there was a compromise. The compromise clearly said that we will have two languages, that is English as well as Hindi. Both will act as official languages, and there was idea of promoting regional language. Now this was up to the governments to promote, but only two were considered to be the official languages of the states, or the center. Now after that, in 1968 this policy came in, National Policy on Education, which introduced this three language formula. After that, in 1986, there is one more national policy on education. In 1992, there is one more policy which revised this particular policy. And both of these, they reaffirm the same policy of three language formula. After that, we see 2020, National Education Policy of 2020. And again, the same thing. They are also saying we want to promote this idea of three language formula. Now, still, there are some states which are not ready with it, especially Tamil Nadu. We see a very heavy resistance from Tamil Nadu, and they are continuing with two language formula. Now, here, although there are issues, let's say Tamil Nadu might say that there is an imposition of Hindi on Tamil Nadu, which they do not accept. They don't want that imposition. But here in the National Education Policy of 2020, government has made it very clear that there should be a choice given to student, and there would not be any imposition of any language, especially Hindi. We are saying there would not be any imposition on any state. Clear? Now look at these constitutional provisions. I want all of you to please get the notes ready, read all these articles. All these articles are related to the language. For example, Article 29 says protecting linguistic minorities and their right to conserve their language. So there is role of language in the fundamental right. Then Article 343 declares Hindi as the official language of the Union, with English continuing for official purpose. Now this was the compromise reached by Constituent Assembly. Then Article 346, this governs official language communication between state and union. And similarly, there are some other articles. And if you see, there is 8th schedule. The schedule lists out total 22 languages. Total 22 official recognized languages which are right now recognized by our constitution. Okay, so these are constitutional provisions. Now, if you see, overall, we should know what is the core argument when some people or some states they are supporting the idea of promoting three language formula and some are not supporting. Why? What's the core reason? So we've already discussed the objectives, why this three language formula was being brought up. So all those objectives can be considered as the arguments which are supporting this idea. So cognitive and educational benefit, which we have already discussed. National integration, we have already discussed. Now there is third thing, that is employment benefit. As I mentioned, in India, if you know English, if you have a decent hold over English, you can easily get a job. And vice versa, if you do not have a good hold over English, then that acts as a barrier in your career. There are so many employment opportunities which get opened up just because you have hold over one particular language which has demand in the market. Okay, so employment opportunities can be considered over here, and it's not about just market in India. If when we look at the global market, the global language of business, science and technology, this is nothing but English. Okay, so this angle is important, and this angle of preservation of regional language I have already discussed. So all these are arguments which favor three language formula. Now we have some arguments which go against this idea. There is some resistance. Why there is resistance? First, perceived language imposition. Many states they feel that there is a deliberate attempt by the central government or the northern states to impose Hindi on them. Now this resistance or this kind of protest comes from Tamil Nadu or some other states, like if you go to northeast, similar kind of protest you will observe in Tripura. So many states do not like this imposition part. Most importantly, this imposition itself is an undemocratic idea. Then what about the feasibility and infrastructure part? Now this is a very practical kind of argument, I'll say. What is the argument? Can you really implement three language formula? If you go to government schools, they will say, sir, we don't have enough infrastructure, we don't have enough number of teachers, we don't have enough amount of money to pay to these teachers. How can we implement three language formulas? Now this will be said by government schools. And if you ask private schools, they have got money. What private schools do? They prioritize English over anything. So here we see that there are some constraints with respect to feasibility or infrastructure or implementation. Then there is risk to regional language. Now this is the concern raised by many states. Now what we said as perceived language imposition, that was one concern. The other side of the concern was our regional language will wean away. There will be dominance. Already there is dominance of English. There will be dominance of Hindi, and our regional language will not have anything, and it will get declined with time. The fourth argument is it will be used as a political tool. Political tool. Why? Because language acts as part of our identity, and there is something called identity politics. In India, identity politics is very common. It's not just in India, in many other countries you will find identity politics. So when we have different identities, caste is one of the identity. So is there politics which revolves around caste? Yes. Similarly, when we have language as an identity, then this language will be used as a political tool by many political parties. And there is a conflict. There is a conflict. Why? There might be a case that at the central level or there is one political party which is trying to mobilize its votes. It is trying to get votes in the name of religion. Now, religion is one of your identity. There is another party who is trying to get votes in the name of caste. So, they have their methods, they are working with their products, they are trying to mobilize people with their identity. They are also doing this. Now comes third type of party who will try to mobilize votes of people on the basis of identity of language. So there will certainly be some parties. There are parties already who try to mobilize. So this political angle is there, because of which three language formula gets heavy resistance. I hope you're getting. Now, if you look at the challenges, although the arguments against it cover up these challenges, still linguistic regionalism. Now, this we have already discussed that non-Hindi speaking states look at it as imposition. There are lack of resources. Now, this is one of the angle which we haven't considered till now. What about the academic burden on students? Those students whom we are saying that they are burdened with so much syllabus, so much academic stuff. Even if you look at this national education policy or this new policy, it also says that we should reduce the academic burden and we should bring in more extracurricular activities. But here, when we are adding one more language subject, aren't we increasing the academic burden on the students? This is one question we need to answer. And another idea is the neglect of foreign languages. Now, when we are looking at three language formula, we're just looking at English, Hindi, and one of the regional language, let's say Tamil. Now, what about the foreign languages like Chinese, French? Now, aren't these languages important? Because if you look at China, it's one of the growing economy. It's right now it's at the second stage, or right now after a few years, let's say we can say it will be the number one economy in the world. So China is playing and will be playing a key role in the world market. So don't you think knowing Chinese or Mandarin is important? So there is neglect. This we have to consider. Now, one real issue that we might be hiding when we are looking at three language formula is the declining language education standards. Don't think about this three language formula. Think about this aspect that are we having good teaching standards right now wherever we are teaching whichever language? Is their quality standard maintained? So whether you're teaching Hindi or English, we observe that the teachers who are teaching English, they themselves are not that trained. They are very poorly trained teachers, and that's why we are saying, what about this aspect? Then, impact of regional languages. They are treated as cultural artifacts. So, if you read sociology, there is a concept wherein you'll understand that westernization taking place, or somewhere we are confusing modernization with westernization. So we have given English as a status in our mind. After that, there comes the status for Hindi or our regional languages. And if you look at specifically the regional languages, they are treated as cultural artifacts, and they are not being treated as something through which you can grow. Whenever you have to grow, you look at English, only English. So what are these regional languages for? Just for the flowery conversation? Here we have a question. Then there's a decline in reading habits. Now this is a concerning thing. We are observing there is a decline in the reading habits among students. And with the role of social media, because most of the people right now, they're spending hours and hours watching reels or videos, their reading habit is declining. Reading is a very active process, and this is highly important for your our cognitive development. So overall, when you look at this angle, you understand that more than that three language formula, this declining language education standard, this is a major issue. Okay, now what could be the possible solutions or way forward? First of all, we can have a constructive dialogue among center and the state, so that this resistance will go away, some compromises will be made. Then there should be some flexibility while implementing. So role of state is highly important. So you have to consider that based on regional preference and practical feasibility, you should go ahead with implementation. And this burden on students should be reduced as much as possible. Then strengthening language education. Now education standard has to be strengthened. For that you have to ensure that there is quality in the teachers. So you have to give training to these teachers. You need to give them resources. If they require books, if they require any other training, you should provide that. And improving English proficiency. So whatever it is, whether you focus on regional language or not, you can't neglect this fact that you'll have to focus on English considering the demand of the market. Then you have to strengthen the regional languages too. So you can promote the regional literature, regional media, etc. And government policies should ensure that these regional languages are not sidelined just because there is focus being given to English and Hindi. Okay, this is government's responsibility. At last, there should be a special focus in the government schools when it comes to quality education. So right now we're talking about e-governance. Similarly, we can bring in digital resources, language labs, teacher training, especially in the rural part of India where there are only government schools. So all these are possible solutions and the way forward. Okay, now I'll give you just 5 seconds of a break and we'll start with the second article. Now the second article. This article is related to Einstein ring. Very interesting article, a bit technical article. You can read this previous year question. How does Juno mission of NASA help to understand the origin and evolution of Earth? And even this discovery of Einstein ring, this one is going to build some knowledge among scientists regarding the evolution of Earth. Okay. Now see what has happened recently. So we have a space agency with Europeans. So in India we have ISRO, in America we have NASA, in Europe we have European Space Agency. So their space agency, they have this Euclid Space Telescope, a telescope. Now this telescope has recently discovered something interesting, what we call as Einstein ring. Einstein ring. Now the name of this ring is given as Altair's ring. Okay, this was after the astronomer Bruno Altieri. So there is a ring, and this ring is not in our solar system on Earth or something like that. It is in a different galaxy altogether. The name of that galaxy is NGC 6505. Now you don't need to remember all this. You just need to know what do we mean by this Einstein ring. So what is Einstein ring? So it is a unique astronomical phenomena that occurs due to gravitational lensing. Now this is in one line it is given. But first of all, we should know what is gravitational lensing. So if you look at the universe, if you look how things are going on, you will see the role of gravitational force. And whatever is happening in the universe, gravitational force will play a key role. For example, here we have sun, here let's say we have earth. Why earth is over here and not gone beyond the Pluto? Reason being, there is some gravity of sun acting on earth. There is some gravity of earth that is also acting. So overall gravity is playing key role. Now you must have heard about one thing, that whatever light is there, let's say we have sun or any other star. Okay, when you look at sun or star, it has its own mass, it has its own matter. So what is here? There is some matter over here, and as well as there is some light coming out of it, because there is some heat, there is some energy which is being emitted, because of which we see light coming out. Okay, now when you look at light, there is one phenomena or one important property of light, that it travels in straight line. right? If light has started, let's say from sun, the light has started emitting from here, so it will travel in the straight line in the entire universe. This is the property of light. Now, one interesting phenomena that happens with respect to light is that it bends its path, and that is called as gravitational lensing. When light bends its path, so you see over here, let's say we have a galaxy over here. Okay, we have a galaxy, or let's say a sun, a star, or anything. So whatever you observe over here, let's say this is a kind of star or some kind of a galaxy. Okay, and there is one more galaxy over here, and here we are sitting, we have a telescope. Using that telescope, we are trying to observe this star or this galaxy. We just want to know how does it exactly look. Now, how do we observe? We know that light travels in the straight line. So we are making use of those light rays, using which we are trying to know how it exactly looks. So we need telescope because we can't see it through our naked eyes. Now, this galaxy, which is way far, that is also emitting some light. So we thought that those lights which are getting emitted, that will show us the real picture. Interestingly, whenever we have a matter which is very heavy, substantially heavy, that matter is heavy enough to even bend the light. So although this light is supposed to pass in a straight line, this will not happen. The light which is coming over here will get bent. It will get bent. Why? Because we have a very heavy matter over here. And this phenomena is called as gravitational lensing. So if you look at any lens, the lens also happens to be of the same kind. Okay, where you will see that light will get bent. There will be some refraction, or some kind of change in the angle of light when you look at lens. Because similar thing is happening over here, it is called as gravitational lensing. I repeat, it is called as gravitational lensing. Now, when you look at this thing from this telescope, so whatever light is coming, that will get bent, because of which some kind of circular thing will be there. So let's say if all these three things are in one line, if they are aligned properly, so here we have the galaxy whose light is coming, here we have the galaxy or star or planet or whatever which we are observing, and here we are with our telescope. So this galaxy already has its own light, but because this light is coming and which is getting bent, that will create a kind of a circle around, and that is called as this Einstein ring. So if you can see, when you will see through the telescope, this particular galaxy, which is this one, this galaxy, which is this one, will have an extra ring over here, and this ring is because of the light coming from here, which should not have been seen, but light is getting bent, because of which we are observing that ring. Okay, so very interesting phenomena. This is gravitational lensing, and this is the Einstein ring. Now, why have we named it as Einstein ring? Because all this theory is based on the idea of general theory of relativity given by Einstein. Under this theory, we got to know that those which are massive objects, something which is having very heavy matter, they can bend light. They are so much capable that they can bend light. So this was told by Einstein, that was predicted by him. Now this was confirmed with experiments by Sir Arthur Eddington in 1919, and later on first Einstein ring was observed in 1988. Clear? Now what has recently happened? So recently, discovery of Einstein ring by Euclid Space Telescope, this has taken place. And till now, only 5 other gravitational lenses at similar distances have been found. So that means Whatever is being observed right now by this telescope, it is very important. We only have 5 more examples. That's it. Okay. Now see, is this discovery very important? Will it have some significance for scientists? Yes. First of all, validation of Einstein's general relativity theory, that we are sure that the theory was right. Then we are going to study about the dark matter because of this. So what is dark matter? So there is some matter. So let's say when you are looking at a galaxy or a star, it is having matter. It has matter, and it also emits some light because it has some energy also, heat also, which is getting emitted. But dark matter is something where there is no light. There is only matter and there is no light as such. So there will be complete darkness. You won't see anything, but the matter is there. And interestingly, if this gravitational lensing phenomena is taking place over there, can you even see? It's very difficult. Observing it is very difficult because there is no light coming from this matter. So whatever study that we have over here, that will be helpful in studying dark matter, which is around 30% of the total universe mass energy. Then how universe is getting expanded, we will also study that. We say that there is universe and it is getting expanded with time. So that will be understood by scientists better. And in the astrophysical research, the data coming from this ring, that will be highly important. I hope you understood this article. Now, the next article is related to care economy. Now you can read this previous year question. I'll give you 5-10 seconds. Please read the question. Done. So the question talks about challenges for women in India against time and space. A very broad question specific to women. Now in this article we are going to read about one specific aspect of care economy related to women again. Article says that somewhere when we look at the Union Budget 2025, we don't see much importance given to this care infrastructure or care economy. First of all, what do we mean by care economy? So, any work which involves the activity of care, that will be part of care economy. Now, this might involve some paid work, this might involve some unpaid work. Let's say some care activities, like there's a nurse working in a hospital, she is providing some kind of a care. A primary teacher or a teacher taking care of some small children or small kids, so she's also giving some kind of a care. So all those things wherein care is provided. Now how it could be paid or unpaid? A nurse, she's getting paid for her work. But there are many people who are giving same kind of services which are not paid. So if you look at your family, you look at your mother, you look at your grandmother, grandparents, they are also giving some kind of care to their children. And such activities, we can say that they are part of unpaid activities. They are not paid. Now, if you look at the unpaid work, if you look at the unpaid work done by women specifically, so we have some data over here. For example, globally women spend 17.8% of their time on unpaid work. Globally, we are saying. And if you look over here, the burden in India is way higher. For example, 53% of women in India remain outside the labor force due to their responsibilities which involve care work. And women in low income families, they work for 17 to 19 hours daily, which includes their paid work, unpaid work, everything. And here we have a graph to show that what women in India are doing. So 34% of them are involved in domestic duties. 14% domestic duties plus some additional work like some tailoring, some weaving, etc. Only 11% are attending educational institutions. 4%, 4 to 5%, they are having some retirement pensions they are getting, and 0.9% are disabled. Self-employed are 19.7%. Casual labor 6.8%. Regular wage 5.3%. 1.1% unemployed. So you might say that women are not involved in the economic activities, but somewhere they are also doing some unpaid work, which is not being recognized. So if you see, they're doing unpaid work at home. Let's say they're taking care of the kitchen, they're taking care of the children. That's an unpaid work. Apart from that, many women are getting into the farm work, water collection, fuel gathering. All this is also important task for which they are not getting paid. Most of the women, their time over here, water collection, they spend a lot of time. For example, up to 5 hours daily they spend in collecting water. And can you imagine, with this climate change issue, this 5 hours might become 8 or 10 hours per day. So women will have to spend this time. We have some World Bank observations. World Bank says that even if women are trying to get into the labor force, getting into the economic activities where they are paid, they face one penalty known as marriage penalty. As soon as they get married, they have to leave their job. Or else there will be another thing called as child penalty. So, to give birth to the child, to spend some time with the child, and it is being assumed by the society that it is the responsibility of the mother to take care of the child, and that's the reason she has to leave all her other duties to take care of the child. That is the care part, for which she will not be paid for sure. So, this is the penalty served by women. Now, as a solution part, we have a framework. Now, some people call it 3R framework, some call it 4R framework. Doesn't matter. We should know what is the framework. So, we're talking about recognize, reduce, redistribute, and represent. This is for women. First of all, recognize. Recognize that there is an unpaid work over here. When you recognize, then only through policies, government can come up with some solutions. So, this recognition is highly important. So how will you recognize? First, you have to do some surveys. You have to come up with some data regarding that. Then after recognition, start reducing this burden, burden of unpaid work. So that you can do by expanding access to essential infrastructure, and you can make it free for the women. Then investing in child care, elder care, assistive technologies. If government of India will spend its money bringing in some infrastructure or whatever devices required for these things, then women will not have to spend their time on these works where they are not even paid for. So if we can invest, we can reduce their care burden. Then third, redistributing care work. Now, how can you redistribute? Give this work to some other people. How will you give that? Well, one role will be of state, one role will be of private sector. So both of them can come into picture, building their care economy, and they can take over the burden. So this can be redistributed. So let's say you build one child care system in your locality that will take care of all the child care things. So what will happen is, somewhere, whether this is done by state or private sector or an NGO, doesn't matter, but this will be redistributed. Then fourth, representation. We have to increase women representation, especially in the policy making and the decision making. We all know that when it comes to policy making, we don't see much women. If you look at police force, there are 10% women. If you look at Lok Sabha, hardly 15% women are there. So when you look at these things, when you look at Lok Sabha, Raj Sabha, when you look at policy level, when you look at the bureaucracy, everywhere women are less in number, and when you do not have much representation, how do you expect that policies will be framed for you, in interest of you? So that is required. So 4 R's you can remember: recognize, reduce, redistribute, and represent. You can put redistribute and represent together and call it 3R also. Now we have a case study related to the same, which is called Bogota case care block. Now there's a country called Colombia. In that country, Its capital is Bogota. So there was a model, and we are studying this model because we found it very interesting, wherein we have redistributed the work. So what they did, they reduced the burden of unpaid care work by centralizing essential caregiving services. They have centralized it. So as I said, in your locality you can bring in one center where all the caregiving activities will be there. What kind of caregiving activities? Childcare, elder care, health care, education, job training service, everything at one place. And this could be free of cost. So all this can be provided by us also by following this Bogota care block model. Okay, I hope you understand the care economy. Now we have last a fourth article, PLI 2.0. So PLI 2.0 is on the government table. They are planning to come up with this PLI scheme. PLI means production linked incentive. Now look at this previous year question. Please read this. I'll give you 5-10 seconds again. Please read this previous year question. Now, if you read this, this question specifically talks about this manufacturing sector, right? Should have a really good understanding of the manufacturing sector. Government of India is focusing a lot on manufacturing sector, although we have failed to a good extent. So this PLI scheme is also very important because it is also dealing with manufacturing sector. Now we have this production linked incentive scheme. What government of India wants is we should have more manufacturing facilities in India. Why? First of all, it will absorb our people. We have a lot of population which is not having very high skill set as such, but more or less maximum people are involved in the agricultural activities, and so many people are not required over there. There's disguised unemployment. So we want to absorb those people. Now they are not so skilled enough to get into IT or any other highly skilled industry or service sector, we can say. In service sector we require high skill. If people are not skilled, then they can't get into it. But if you are semi skilled or unskilled, there is a chance you can get into manufacturing sector, and government wants that so many people should get employment. So first of all, this is a good opportunity. Manufacturing will provide jobs. Second, we want that our economy should grow. An economy will grow by more exports. We want our exports to increase, and in exports will increase when we increase our manufacturing. Already services are doing good. They have to do the same in the manufacturing. So for that we want that manufacturing should do well. Now to do it well, what government is trying is to bring in more investment for the manufacturing part. But private sector will come up only when there is any incentive. So government is providing that incentive. So this is called production linked incentive, that if you are producing something in India, you have a manufacturing facility over here, government is going to provide you some financial incentive. Let's say this production linked incentive scheme comes for 5 years, then for 5 years you're going to get some kind of tax benefit or some financial benefit directly. So this was the idea behind production linked incentive scheme, and this is working. This is working, and that's the reason government is saying now we are going to bring in PLI 2.0, production linked incentive scheme 2.0. And the idea is to deepen localization, enhance exports, and strengthen India's position in the entire global supply chain. Okay, now you have understood what do we mean by this production linked incentive scheme. Now you can look at this thing. What are the targeted sectors over here? Which sectors are being targeted? So there are 14 sectors, which includes mobile manufacturing, medical devices, automobiles, auto components, pharmaceuticals, specialty steel, telecom and networking, electronics, white goods such as ACs, LEDs, food processing, textiles, solar PV modules, advanced chemistry cells, drones, etc. Okay, so these are those sectors which are being targeted, so that more investment will be here in these sectors. And if you look at the impact, now this example is very important. If you look at the smartphone manufacturing, in this year 2017 to 2018, the mobile phone imports with India was somewhere around $3.6 billion. Of this amount import we did when it comes to this year. And as far as export is concerned, it was somewhere around 334 billion US dollar. Now after that, government brought this scheme, they have worked on it, and now 2022-23 data, import got declined to 1.6 billion, from 3.6 to 1.6 billion. Import reduced and export increased. It was earlier 334 million, now it is 11 billion. So can you see the gap? So this scheme is certainly working, and this can be shown through this particular data. So such incentives will be very helpful in dealing with our manufacturing sector. So this is all about this PLI. Okay. Now the last article, that is this tune trouble. The power to block content must be used sparingly. Now, we have covered this article in our 19th February Delhi news analysis. Here you see digital censorship. So we have discussed in detail. You can watch the same lecture. You'll get the link in the description or the comment box. You can directly go through that link. No issues. Okay. So let's start with our practice questions. So mains practice question: critically examine the three language formula in the context of National Education Policy 2020. Suggest a balanced approach to address the concerns of different linguistic communities while ensuring national integration. A very interesting and a very broad kind of a question we have. First, you should start with this three language formula or the debate around three language formula. So you can mention in 1968 national policy this was brought in, or in the 2020 policy also, it also talks about this concept of three language formula. But there are some hurdles, there are some concerns related to it. Okay. Then they have talked about balanced approach for addressing concerns. So you can divide this part. You can talk about the concerns first and then about this balanced approach. So the balanced approach will include the ways forward or solution part, which I've already discussed. For example, equitable language education, reducing academic burden, all that. Okay. But when you say critically examine, try to divide it into multiple broader dimensions. Here it has been asked for 10 marks, you will have lesser space to write this answer. When you have more space, let's say 15 marks, then you have to go in detail. So what you can do is you can put brief about this national education policy. Briefly you can discuss about this part of three language formula. You can talk about the concerns, and then you can discuss about this balanced approach. Okay. Now some questions of yesterday's daily news analysis or Saturday's daily news analysis. So India AI mission aims to build AI computing infrastructure, data sets and skilling programs to promote AI accessibility for businesses and startups. Okay, the statement is very general and the statement is absolutely right. Center for Artificial Intelligence and Robotics under Niti Aayog focuses on AI applications. Now this is not under Niti Aayog, it is under DRDO. So this statement is wrong. So answer will be A1 only. Now this talks about avalanche. Avalanches occur only due to natural causes. No, there are some man-made causes also. Human activities such as deforestation and skying can contribute to avalanche. Yes. Avalanche happen only in polar regions. No. Wind has no role. No, wind has some role to play. So only B seems to be the right answer. Then this talks about Aditya L1. Very interesting question. Aditya L1 is placed exactly at Lagrangian point L1, since it allows Aditya to remain at same position between Sun and the Earth. Well, the statement is wrong. Why? Because when you say Lagrangian point and when you talk about Aditya L1, so this is the Lagrangian point and there is a halo, there is an orbit or halo around it, and this Aditya L1 is placed in that halo. So we can't say it is at a straight one particular position as such. That's why this statement is wrong. And the key objective of Aditya L1 is to study the solar atmosphere and solar wind. This is right. I will consider this question as a tough question. Okay, so 2 only is the right answer. Now here some practice questions for you. You will have link in the description, comment box. Go through those links, directly attempt these questions. Okay. Anyway, we'll get the answers in the next daily news analysis, that is tomorrow. First question on Einstein ring. What is an Einstein ring? You can pause the video and read it and attempt the question. Second, this is about production linked incentive scheme. Again, you can pause the video, read the question and attempt it. And third, this is about the women or the unpaid work they do. So brief statements are given, you have to answer. Again, a decent question, I'll say. Okay, please go ahead and attempt these questions. We'll meet in the next session. Thank you so much.